this month's episode of the MyFly podcast. We will be speaking with Baliukonis, a high school student and financial professional. From managing a €300 endowment fund to interning as an investment analyst and co-founding an investing club, Matos is balancing education and real-world impact. Join us as we explore how he's building his career. So you're juggling a lot, being a CEO and still in high school. Walk us through what a day in your life looks like.
Yeah, 100%. First of all, thank you for having me. I think my job every day is to try to juggle a bit less. And so what I try to do, for example, is to minimize how much I have to do from the school perspective. So for example, I try to really focus during lessons and ask as many questions as possible, sit in the front, be very active with homework, while doing homework during the lesson. And then my goal is to never do homework after school. And I think I kind of achieved that during the last 3 years. And as long as my grades stay fine or, well, very good for universities, that's completely fine for teachers, parents, and all that. And I'm grateful I have those. But talking about the endowment, I think that the main goal for students working at the same time is to try to be very flexible how they work. What I'm talking about is, a lot of the times you're not going to have an 8-hour block to just work. So what you have to do, you have to write emails during the breaks, 10 minutes of break. You just, for example, write an email or I don't know, call someone that needs to be called. And then you just do these little snippets of work during the day. And after school, you have around 5 hours of focused work for anything that needs very specific attention and doesn't require communicating with other people. And I think that's kind of it. If you want to get into the specifics, I can, but every day is totally different.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I know even people who aren't CEOs struggle with managing, like spreading out that time and like finding chunks of long time is hard for anyone.
Exactly.
To do work. So Vilnius Jesuit High School Investing Club teaches personal finance to students. So how did you go from learning to teaching, and what inspired you to start this initiative?
Okay, short background on my investing side of me. When I was like 12 years old, as every single kid in the world, I wanted to make a bit more money to buy whatever, more ice cream, a toy, it doesn't matter. But during that time, the most popular thing on the internet about making money was options trading. And for anyone who doesn't know what options are, it's basically an investing product, let's say, where you can make a lot of money and lose a lot of money very quickly if you're doing what I did. And so what I did, I went to Discord, found the first trading signals group that popped up. I paid them a quarter of my then savings. It was around $50. Mm-hmm. And then they said, okay, you have $150 left. We're going to make you a millionaire by the end of, let's say, 3 months. And so I stayed. And obviously, as most people experience, I lost all of my money with options trading. But I believe that was one of the most valuable lessons I learned about volatility. For example, I experienced 50% gain in one day of my portfolio and then 80% decline. So I think I'm now, when the market moves, let's say 20% in a year, or even 30, 40%, it doesn't really matter to me because I've experienced a lot worse. And I think that was a great learning experience. Then, it taught me not to really trust strangers' advice about investing, especially people who only tout returns, don't really give specific reasoning why they're entering a position or exiting it, but whatever. So basically after that, I found a mentor from Greece that was obviously a lot more experienced than me. He was investing for his family. He now works in a hedge fund. And so basically in 3-4 years, every single Sunday, we used to meet around 2 hours for around 2 hours, where he just taught me everything he knew, from economics to investing and and a lot more. And I believe that from that, I was able to actually start putting it into practice. So internships, I did one at one of the biggest startups in Lithuania. I did one at this venture capital fund. That's, I think, top 3% in Europe. And this year I did one at a private equity fund. Mm-hmm. So using all of that knowledge, I believe that it was now time to share it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what my mentor actually emphasized all of the time. You know, he didn't take any money, he didn't ask for any favors. The only thing he asked for, he said, Matas, you know, you have to share knowledge when you have it. So that's why I'm doing it with you. And my only ask is, after I teach you, please share that knowledge with others. Yeah. And so after I got some knowledge from him, from internships, other resources, the endowment, of course, I decided that I needed to share it, especially with the students, the younger people, because in Lithuania, that's a very big problem, because most people only invest into real estate. And I think that's a thing of, like, I don't want to say developing countries, but just Eastern European countries, Middle European countries, and a lot of smaller countries, that the main thing people want to invest in is real estate, because, you know, it's very tangible, it's very stable, and so that's what the kids learn as well from their parents. And so investing into stocks and all of that, it's not really a thing. And so what we tried to do is we created the club, and then we started teaching ourselves, and then we started inviting guests. And I think during 3 years, like 15% of all of the school already has went through our program. So it has gained a very big popularity, especially since in Lithuania, clubs are not really a big thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. First of all, your mentor, you're so lucky to have that. And a lot of people don't. Yeah. And I think people, when it comes to younger kids, I think there's also it's a bit intimidating to get involved into something that's a little bit more confusing. I think, like you said, like real estate is tangible and it's a little bit more understandable. On that note, you've authored the Longview newsletter. Mm-hmm. What inspired you to start writing? Is it kind of the same, like getting a bigger audience and spreading that knowledge, or is there something else as well?
I think there's a couple of parts to it. The first one was that I really wanted to understand my own thinking and just try to find holes in it. Because when you're researching, let's say, a company, sometimes you can get pretty biased. For example, okay, let's say a person is researching Apple, they love the product, so he's automatically gonna see all the positives of their financials, of their management. And I mean, there's many, so it's hard not to. And when it comes to negatives, I mean, he's gonna say, oh, you know, that can turn into a positive, that can be overlooked, whatever. And so when you're writing everything down on paper, you can obviously see, okay, how many pros I've included, how many cons, what do I know about the management, how deep is my knowledge. And so when you write everything down on paper, you obviously start seeing gaps in your own thinking and your research. And it has helped me personally tremendously. But then if we look outside, I mean, outside reasoning, obviously I want to educate people as much as possible, especially in Lithuania, because I want to show people that, you know, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia are not the only stocks that you can invest in. I try to focus right now on a bit smaller companies, sometimes on special situations. And so what I try to show people is there's a new way of investing that can generate a bit more excess returns than the indices. And yeah, I mean, the newsletter is pretty small right now. I think we have around 650 subscribers, but I haven't been that active because I only want to write when I see great opportunities. Yeah. And yeah, inherently, I'm not really a good writer. I think my teachers could agree to that, but that's also a thing why I'm doing it, is because I believe I can improve in that area a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying about, like, when you write out your work, when you read it through, like, that's where you really find your weaknesses and, like, holes, as you said. What I was going to ask is, what do you think has been your proudest moment so far with either your endowment or your club or, yeah.
I mean, there's many, but most people would think, as my job is, to fundraise, manage the investments pipeline, is that I would be very proud of our financial results. But, in reality, even while we have all of these financial goals that we meet or don't, and it's not really the thing that at the end you remember. Because, when you, for example, you fundraise, then you invest, and then you get the return that you can distribute and you do it, as for example we do in our annual scholarships or programs like that, and then you see the proudness of the parents that they're posting the kids for their scholarships on social media, how proud they are. The kids are also overjoyed. They're now able to explore new things because of the financial support, and then there's this beautiful events around it and celebrating smart kids basically. And so then after we see the results, for example, some of our kids go on to use the money for advanced textbooks, for example. Probably, as you know, textbooks in the USA cost a lot, especially university ones. So sometimes they use the money to buy a lot of those. Sometimes they use to pass some exams that need to be passed and are a bit more expensive. So after you see the tangible results that the money that your work cost, that's when I feel the proudest, and I think that's when all of our volunteers or also students feel proud.
That's great. And you're 18, right? So you've likely encountered skepticism about your age. How do you approach situations where people underestimate you? And I know some people use that to their advantage. They like being underestimated and then showing and proving that they belong. But how do you feel about that?
I mean, 100%. I think, in the endowment work, sometimes that comes as a privilege because that's the way you can stand out, right? Because all of other nonprofits in Lithuania, the leaders are 40, 30, 50 years old, and then they all go to fundraise the same people because Lithuania is very small. For example, the people that have a net worth of over 1 million in Lithuania is no more than 1,000, 2,000 people. So there's a very limited amount of people to fundraise from, and all of them get tens of emails a day asking for money. And so our age is actually an advantage. Imagine, a 15-year-old girl is coming to you asking to support her classmates in academic research and all of that. And I mean, it works for us, but at the same time, for example, in the internships, most times I was the first person that was not from university to get in, and how I did that was basically a lot of networking, outreach, and then many negotiation meetings, because everyone is obviously very skeptic of allowing, for example, then 15, 16-year-old me into a company where you have to work with their finances, products, and if you mess up, that could cause a lot of damage for the company. And so I found people who were willing to take a risk, and I mean, I think in the first couple of times when it works out, they can recommend you, and then it compounds. People start seeing the results of your work. For example, the investment analyst me in Lithuania is getting a bit more known, I could say, through interviews and all of that, and obviously results. And as people start noticing that, then more people will notice, and then it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. You've also had an experience at Yale Young Global Scholars program. I know for a lot of high school students, kind of like what you were saying, we do these programs to kind of stand out, but also to get more experience. How would you say that this specific program shaped your perspective on economics, politics, law, what you do now?
I mean, I think first thing is globalism. I met so many people there, and so I think that really shaped my worldview of how there's so many people around the world and how there's so many more smart people around the world, smarter than you, from which you can learn. And I think that, that really caused me to seek out more people like that, and made me more open to the idea of traveling around the world and learning from different people. Another thing is about CEOs. I think it was a lecture by David Bach, an amazing lecturer. And so what he talked about was, should CEOs be vocal about politics on social media? And I think it's obviously a very important topic in today's world, as we see Elon Musk doing everything he's doing. And so what he talked about was that CEOs should reflect the opinions of their employees and their shareholders and clients. And I think that was a very important point, and actually caused me a lot to think a lot about, what I'm actually writing in the social media. Am I expressing the opinions and views of my stakeholders? And it changed the way I do that.
Yeah. That's amazing. And that's a really important topic to think about. And not even for, I mean, CEOs, obviously, yes, they have a lot of influence, but also even like us now, we don't know where we'll end up in the future. And like writing what we're thinking now, it can be a bit, it can be a bit intimidating, especially as AI and social media and everything is getting more and more kind of intense, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
like there's, for example, in Lithuania, there's a lot of tools being developed, the AI tools, that can just see everything the person's ever written on the internet, and then there's this product, and it creates an algorithm that sorts the comments into positive, negative, leaning left, right, and I think that, if today, and for example, 18, 17, 19 years old, we write messages that are very extreme in the politics, I think that can cause a lot of problems for us in the future, because obviously, opinions shift, and there's a lot of industries, for example, where they don't hire, let's say, Democrats or Republicans, and it doesn't really matter. But I think that it's important to be a little bit less vocal on social media, just writing out your opinions, but maybe a bit more, uh, a bit more showing of your opinions by work.
Yeah.
And I think that if people really support a certain, let's say, party or a certain topic, they should just dedicate some time for that, and not only writing about it on social media, because that will be useless. Nobody will really care, and that's just damage you.
Yeah. Actions speak louder than words, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So with all these roles that you've held, what do you think has been your biggest learning curve? Like, was there a moment where you were really questioning what you were doing?
hmm I think the hardest part about transitioning from school to professional life, and I'm talking a bit more about the internships, is the expectations and the level of intensity. Because when you're at school creating clubs, even the start of the endowment, you're doing the best you can. Trying to figure out as you go. You're watching some YouTube videos, some courses about the topic, and then that's the level that you operate in, right? But then you go to an institution that has been around for decades, that has achieved returns, top couple of percent returns, and they have so much experience. They have so many traditions. They have a lot of ways of doing something that is not really out there on, Coursera or Udemy or YouTube.
Yeah.
And so you have to really adjust to that quickly, and take everything so seriously, and listen a lot to actually be able to adapt. And adaptability is also a very important thing. For example, the first time I went to a venture capital fund, I read all about investing into startups, about analyzing startups. I was a little bit educated on that, but then I came in, and then they're like, okay, is this a good founder or a bad founder? Is he going to become a billionaire, or is he going to fail? How do you even how can you decide that? And there's a lot of these little things that you have to pick up on, or for example, aligning stuff. I never actually, I'm not a really design kind of guy, but when you go to an investing fund, apparently design and alignment is very important because that's how you show yourself to stakeholders. And so trying to learn that, how important it is that, like, this thing is aligned by that and it's not like a millimeter the other way. So just adjusting yourself is very important.
Yeah, yeah. So fundraising seems to be a recurring theme and a big part of your career right now. What do you think is the secret to like a successful fundraising for causes that you care about?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very hard topic, obviously, because I don't have that much experience. I have 3 years of experience fundraising, and there's been a big shift in how I do that, how I teach people to do that at our endowment. At first, I thought that, the more facts you present, the more specific you are, the more correct you are, that's how you're going to fundraise more money. You're going to spit out a lot of facts about a lot about your specific scholarships, and then you're gonna get money. It's completely different. People value ambition and future promise much more than your actual results, and that's just a psychological fact. And so when we started seeing that, we saw that people really try to do a mental calculation. Okay, I have, let's say, $10 and I want to dedicate them to nonprofits. Okay, so I have, Save the Children. They're gonna create that much impact with those $10. We have UNESCO, and then we have Baliukonis High School Endowment. Okay, so who's gonna create the most impact with those $10? Who's gonna use the most for creating impact, and who's gonna spend it on salaries? So you have to start understanding the other perspective to actually be able to fundraise, and trying to really listen to what people care about, trying to create a tailored solution for their needs, and trying to understand that it's still a product. Fundraising, for a nonprofit is not the same as, you're begging for money on the street. No, you have an actual product that you're trying to really use the money to create as much impact as possible. And if you can prove to the potential donor, that you're gonna be the best steward of their money, that's how you get good results. And I believe that trying to show your mission, trying to show your ambition, and really connecting with the other person on the same level is the way to get good results.
Yeah, I never thought about that, like putting yourself in their shoes and seeing what they would want to hear the most.
100%.
That's really interesting. So clearly managing a foundation isn't just about numbers. There's a human side to it. So can you share a story that highlights the impact of your work on individuals or a community?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've talked about the programs and scholarships, so I'm not going to talk more about that, even though it's the most important part. But the other very important part of the endowment is education, as we've talked about, the investing club. But the other thing is volunteers, because from the start of the endowment 3 years ago, we've had more than 35 volunteers join our endowment. And I think the experiences, and it's very hard to find this experience elsewhere, because in an endowment, it doesn't matter what you do. You fundraise, you work in marketing or investing. The stakes are much higher because you're working with real money. You're working with the most influential people of Lithuania, most powerful, rich people. And so what you do, what you say, how you act is super important. So when volunteers come to the endowment, we have to teach them how to present in a proper way, how to present themselves, how to present the endowment, how to do small talk. And really, we try to just show people a glimpse of what a perfect fundraiser or a marketing person is. And I believe that, when they come in, they start having higher expectations of themselves. and that translates and really impacts every single area of their lives. School grades usually go up after the student joins on our endowment, even though they have less time. Their personal lives improve as well as they strive to have better relationships. And so then these volunteers start fundraising. They create this network of the most powerful or influential people in their area in Lithuania that they can later use even after the endowment. They learn how to sell themselves or sell a product. That's very helpful not only in the professional world, but just getting into universities. And obviously there's the thing that they're working at the first school endowment, and not only in Lithuania, but in most European countries. And so basically that also allows them to go to the top universities in the world just because they have that factor on their resume. And I think that we can already see that through the admission results of our alums.
That's great. I really love to see when volunteers who join organizations who may have joined just for that resume actually start to become really passionate. I think that's an amazing community to build. So I was gonna talk about how do you stay organized and how do you stay motivated? Because as a leader, you obviously need to have motivation. When you're passionate, everyone else is kind of feeding off that passion and that energy. So how do you stop yourself from, I guess, getting to the point of not struggling to juggle with everything?
Oh, that's a very important topic, I think. And obviously it's a hard topic, right?
Yeah.
But I believe in the principle of this one principle of Jordan Peterson. I don't agree with a lot that he says, but there's this one theory that he said, as you're young, you should try to find your limits, right? So you should first of all work yourself to the ground, to achieve burnout, so you know how much you have to work and what burnout feels like, and document that process. And then you have to be as lazy as possible to see where you're actually starting to lose motivation because you're just so lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did that. I now know how coming close to burnout feels like. And so I try to never achieve that. And so if I start feeling it, I just stop everything, just go watch a movie or whatever, go read a book.
Yeah.
And so first of all is never be burnt out, because that destroys all motivation, that destroys all passion. And obviously, as you said, that can translate to other people, and other people really feel it and then get impacted by it. The other thing is, what drives your motivation? Is it results? Is it money? Is it recognition? Is it the work itself? And for me, there's a couple of things. The first one is the work. I love a good challenge. I love trying to achieve something that's super hard, because that means you have to think of things that have been thought of before very little time, not a lot of times. You have to sometimes even think of things that are never have been thought about. And at the same time, you have to really be so precise. You cannot fail at anything. And if everything aligns and you do everything correctly, then you have a result that was very hard to achieve. And you feel proud of yourself, the team, and the team really feels like they created real impact. And I think that's why I really try to set goals in a way that really challenges people. So it's not impossible goal, but it's not a goal that's going to be easily achieved. It's a goal that's going to require 100%, 110% of you during the whole year. You're not going to be able to achieve it in the first quarter, for example. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is, if you give enough freedom to your volunteers and to your employees, and try to make it seem like they're the only person that's responsible for the specific task, they're going to treat it very seriously, and it's going to become their life's work. Well, maybe not life's work, that's an exaggeration, but their most important task of the year, for example. And they're going to feel very proud of the work they did when you, for example, presented to the shareholders, okay, there's this person that did this, and that created real impact. And when people get the recognition for their work, when they get the freedom to do their work, it's going to be like magic. People are going to really feel secure to experiment, to do new things, and they're going to have the motivation to do it.
Yeah. You basically answered my next question, but I was going to ask, how do you, because I'm sure you've been recognized for your leadership skills. How do you balance that being results driven, but also building a relationship within your roles?
Oh yeah, that's a hard question that I'm struggling with myself. When I started in this role, I was this completely numbers guy. Okay, so our fundraising goal is this, our investment goal is this, and our expenses goal is this. Very specific, numbers focused. But as time went on, I realized that okay, so numbers are our goal, right? It's not a way to achieve something. You're not gonna get better results because you have a bigger goal. And so what I transitioned to is a person who cares about the numbers, obviously, because if you have low goals or bad results, nobody's going to care about the people side. But at the same time, if you have a weak team that's not motivated, that's just going to make it seem like the results well, that's going to make the results obviously bad or even worse, and the goals are going to seem stupid. So what I do now is I set out the numbers at, first of all, the start of the year. Okay, that's our goal for the year. And at the beginning of every quarter, I talk about the quarter goals. And then at the end, I talk about the results. And that's it. On my own time, I focus a lot on numbers. I have to create reports for shareholders and I have to do all of that. But at the same time, for my team, I communicate that, okay, the goals are my responsibility. You don't have to worry about them. You have to worry about doing the best you can. Just if you're fulfilling your potential, I'm gonna be completely happy with you. If you're slacking, if I know you could do better, that's where we have a problem. So, and that varies from person to person. Obviously. So I now try to focus on the people side, and when I do, the results take care of themselves.
Yeah, I can see that. I think when it comes to a lot of like student led or a student community working within an organization, I think that relationship side gets forgotten a bit. Like I think it comes from a place of everyone kind of wants to prove themselves and that they can really achieve. Um, so I think it can be a bit cold, but like the best results always come from strong work relationships and like you said, like setting those achievable but like challenging goals.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like that goal setting is also a thing that can be forgotten. At least in our school, for example, there's some communities of students that are all working. For example, let's say the parliament. I think you have the same thing in the USA, but the student governing body. So they set out a lot of like they set out a lot of promises at the beginning. We're gonna improve the food quality. We're gonna create a new event. But the goals are not really specific. And so if you create very broad and abstract goals, at the end of the year, you can give yourself a pat on the back because you achieved some part of the goal, right? But if you create very specific goals, then you're gonna know when you failed and when you actually succeeded. So that's another part, just have very specific, not abstract goals.
Yeah. This kind of leads on to what I'm going to ask. What advice would you give to younger students about pursuing these big ambitions?
hmm Um, I think you need to find a job that you enjoy, obviously. At the same time, I'm not talking about your hobby, right? Because you don't have to uh, feel like you're resting when you're working. For example, I know some people say, work, be in a job that never feels like working and you're gonna be like resting for the rest of your life. So I don't really believe that. I believe that, if you're actually working, you're obviously just engaging your brain. You're thinking a lot, and that makes you tired. But it has to be a good tired. What I'm talking about is, you don't have to feel depressed after a day of work, and on a Monday you don't have to dread going to work or going to your hobby, whatever. So I think that's very important. Just finding a thing you enjoy, a thing you would like to even do on weekends, and then really sticking to it. Because There's the Dunning-Kruger curve that basically shows that at the start, everyone's so motivated, they think they're the smartest person in the room. And then as they learn a bit more, they understand they know nothing. And I think that happens to every single person. And that's when they usually quit. So at the lows, if you think that you're so stupid at this area and you think you know nothing, that's when you know you've started to progress and improve, and you just have to sit through it. And the same thing happened in investing for me. For example, I at the start I was like investing all my money because I thought I'm gonna 10x it by in every single year. And then I realized that I know nothing. The bear market came, and the music stopped, and I lost most of my money. And okay, I said, I know nothing. This is not for me. I should just quit. But my mentor said, okay, dude, no, we're gonna keep going. You don't have to invest, but we're gonna keep learning, and then let's just see how it goes. And so I did, and that what like my mentor got me through it. So it was a big, it eased the way. But for most people, they're gonna have to do it themselves, and that's gonna be hard. But they must do it, because if you're gonna keep jumping from a hobby to hobby, from a hobby to hobby, you're never gonna find your true passion, and you're never gonna be good at anything. You're gonna be slightly good at everything, but not in a very specific niche. And that's when you go to the professional world, that's not gonna get you a job, or that's not gonna give you an opportunity to create your own business.
Yeah. I just want to touch on one thing. How did you find your mentor? How, like, because I personally know a lot of students who are actually very, very interested in one like specific niche, like you said, but they don't really have anyone to guide them through it, whether like their parents may not know anyone in that field, or I'm just curious how you found yours.
I mean, most of it was obviously luck, but as time went on, I found more and more mentors. I have 4 mentors right now. So I think there's something to it. So basically, the first mentor was by accident. So I just met him on the same Discord, actually, because investing is a lonely job. And if you're doing it full time, you're not gonna meet a lot of people if you're just investing your own money. And so he was on the Discord to chat, talk to some people, and maybe help them build their first long-term portfolio after they lose all of their money. And at that age, I was like 13, very excited to learn. And I think the most important, well, the most important thing when finding a mentor is you have to show that you truly have a very deep passion for the subject, and that you're willing to do the work. And what that means is you come to a person and you're very interested, first of all, in their story. What have they achieved? And, trying to ask very specific questions about that story, being smart with your questions. After that, they're going to give you some advice. For example, I spent 1 hour every Saturday researching gardening. And next time you meet, you're going to say, okay, I took your advice. Every single Saturday, I researched how to plant tomatoes. And so they see that, okay, you're applying their advice. You're actually very passionate about the subject, because then you're going to write them again. You're going to thank them for all of their insights. And then you're going to ask more questions. And you have to be a bit vulnerable as well. For example, I'm having real trouble, finding the correct seeds of tomatoes. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's a problem I also had, and that's how you find the best seeds. Or for me, for example, even it was, hey, I'm having trouble sleeping because investing is very stressful. I'm sure you have experienced that as well. What did you do? And he's like, okay, so there's this brown noise, there's this circadian rhythm, there's these stimulations, brain stimulations that worked for me. Try to use them. And so I did. And what I'm getting to is that you have to actually take the advice and use it. Because if they're going to see that, okay, they're giving out advice and it's not doing anything, I mean, they don't care, but they're not going to give you more advice because it's just useless. And as time goes on and you're engaged with the person and you're really taking all the advice, and they see that you're actually improving and that you're getting results with the advice, they're going to be inclined to give you more advice. And then you just have to, well, spell out the word mentor. So you're like, oh, as you're my favorite mentor, I'm very grateful that you have taught me that. And maybe we should go for a coffee or lunch. I would love to talk more to you about that. And, the person just goes with the word. And as time goes on, the word sticks, and then they officially become your mentor.
Yeah.
It's not like, you meet the first time and it's like, will you be my mentor? No, it's not. It's the same as a friendship. You don't go to a random person, will you be my best friend? Yeah. No, you have to first talk and then just see if you're the right fit. And the most important part is obviously meeting those people for the first time, and that happens through networking. Yeah. And I'm sure there's even more networking events in the USA than in Lithuania, but there's many of those. You just go to those, you try to meet people, and you try to meet people who have very concrete results in that area, who are very well respected, not just people who have the most LinkedIn followers. Yeah. And I think then internships are a great way to do that as well. Meeting the CEO of a company and then really hitting it off, you have a great chance of him becoming your mentor or her. And so I think that's a great way to get mentors as well.
Yeah. Networking is it's a really big one. And it doesn't always, like, sometimes the best connections that you find aren't even in the events. It's just maybe a friend of a friend, or your teacher knows something like that. But it's always helpful.
100%.
Yeah, it's one of the best skills to know. So, last question. Think 5 years from now. Where do you see yourself, and how do you think your current experiences are going to shape your future?
I mean, through the endowment, I really learned, to give back. And I think, Europe, let's just say kind of Eastern Middle Europe, is a place where, 30 years ago, there was the Soviet Union here, everyone was struggling. It was hard to get, for example, butter or milk or bread, it's funny. But, that's why people are really focused on themselves, and they're really scared that, okay, that might happen again. Mm-hmm. And so people are not really altruistic. And I think through the endowment we teach, and I have learned myself, giving back, donating not only money, but your time. And I think that's going to be an important theme in my life. I really believe in giving back and trying to create the most impact through my work and money in the future. And so I honestly believe that I'm going to be working in finance. I think I'm going to work in a hedge fund. In the best case scenario, maybe even start a hedge fund. But the important theme is going to be giving back. And I believe that there's so many people that if they got the right nudge, if they got the right support, they could change the world. And I think there's so much potential that is being wasted in the world. And my job and my goal is to unlock that potential.
Yeah, well, I think what you're doing right now is it's amazing. So thank you so much, Matas, for joining us and for all the information, all the advice. And thanks for everyone for listening in on the My5 podcast. We hope you found today's episode insightful. For more information, you can find us at My5 Global on all platforms. And until next time.